Hello people of YouTube, my name is Brad. This is my channel, Adam and Orange, and welcome to the review for the 1931 Model A that I have right here. So far I have built 3 out of the recently released lineup of Ford in-color models. This is the 3rd one. Fascination did send me 3 to build and review. I've already done the 37 truck and the 32 coupe. And then this one right here, which is the 31 Model A. And I will say, out of those 3 models, the 32 Ford Coupe was the one I was most excited about building because I thought it looked really cool, and it does look really cool. But I think this one, in the end, of just those 3, is going to be, or is my favorite now that I've built them all. And that, like, I somehow got bent up. I don't know what I did there. I did think this one was pretty neat, and I do like the trucks. And funny enough, I remember back in the late 90s, I think I mentioned this before, I had a Pontiac Firebird that had a 350 Pontiac engine in it. And I didn't really have any interest in fixing up the vehicle, but I thought in my head, if I could find something like this, a 30s pickup, that I could drop the engine in with a manual transmission, it would be kind of neat. Not that many people build these with Pontiac engines, but I had a Pontiac engine and it ran, and I thought that would be fun to do. But anyway, building this comes right on the tail of the 32. And if you watch the 32 Coupe build and review, I had a lot of trouble with that one with the paint. I was a little concerned about that with this one, but no, with this model, it was back to business as usual with a lot of the already colored models that I've built. I did not have any problems. The paint on this does not seem to be overly thick. It's laid on nicely. I didn't run into any situations where the tabs were having a difficult time fitting in the slot, with a few, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 exceptions where the slot was painted over and that was just a poke with the tweezers and cleared it and the part went together, which is something that I do usually run into with these colored models. You have the occasional slot that's accidentally painted over, but it's easy to clear. Unlike, for whatever reason, the 37, I had tons of trouble trying to widen slots. I did not have any of that trouble with this model. This model came together beautifully and easily. The other problem that I had with the 37, and with any of the other like 37, the Ford models and the Duesenberg and other classic models, those front fenders can be really challenging to get. Now, in my mind, I want to try and get them as close as I can to what the real thing looks like. It really isn't how these are built. It really isn't how these come together. So they're not going to be exactly like the actual model you see. It's not going to have the same curve. So for one, I had to kind of give up on that idea and go with the way they designed it to be, which is close. But those fenders have kind of a rounded top to the whole thing, whereas these don't. Once I got that idea out of my head, the other thing was the fact that this model, one of the early things you do is work on that fender before you start putting it together, as opposed to the 37 where putting that fender together and on is much later in the model and attaches differently. So right off the bat, pretty early in the build, I was able to put those fenders together, and I just really took the time. The other thing that I think has been an issue for me is there's always 2 pieces that kind of come together, or maybe it's one part but connected here, and then the others you have to curve and put together, and it creates a bit of a seam. And I wanted to do my best to smooth that seam over so it wasn't sharp. It was rounded, and I worked on that a lot with my fingers and ended up with a much better result on this particular model. So I think the reason I got a better result was, one, because I've tried 2 or 3 different ways and they didn't work, and I was beginning to see what I needed to do. But the other is the way this model is designed, with you tackling that head on from the start. For whatever reason, I think that really helped me to get and focus on getting that right, as opposed to it coming much later in the build where I'm possibly already getting a little frustrated and tired with it and not giving it the attention it deserves. I'm trying to attach it to a body that's already built, whereas this one I'm shaping the fenders before the body is even a consideration, so there's plenty of room to work with. It's a very different approach, I think, with this model compared to the others. Allowed me to get a far better result with the fenders. And if you really want to know how I did it, you'd have to go watch part 1 of the build, 2-part build video, and just watch. because I can try to explain it to you, but I don't think it's quite the same as just seeing what I'm trying to do. And I tried to edit it as little as possible so that you can see what I'm doing and just working with it and just trying to get that curve as close as I can. The other thing is, you really can't see on camera, is I have the picture, the packaging right beside me as I'm working on it, so I can look over and kind of see, am I getting the idea right? And I went more for what the packaging is showing than what the real thing looks like, and ended up with a nice looking model. But that was the really big difficult part with a lot of these, is getting those fenders right, and I'm very happy with how this one turned out. Would like for it to improve a little, but overall very, very happy with the way the fenders in this turned out and the way the overall model turned out. It's really fantastic. Came together much easier than the previous one. Looks really good. Just getting the shapes right was fantastic, and this one has become my favorite of the three. Now obviously, if you've been keeping up with my channel, the only Model T that I've done is the original silver one, and that's been a while. I'm not saying that I'm not going to do the others. I don't know when I'm going to do the others. They weren't sent to me to review, and there's a long list of stuff. I would like to do them someday, but I'm honestly not as excited about the Model Ts as I am the Model A's and the Coupe. Just, I don't know, there's something about, I love the styling of these a lot more than the slightly older ones, so I'll get around to them eventually, hopefully. But I'm really, really, really happy with this one right here, and I'm really, really happy with the colors. Colors on this just really set this off so that it's a fantastic looking build. The wheels were a lot easier to do than previous wheels. I did run into one hiccup with them, where this outer rim piece has little flaps you fold down, and I think I folded them too much. So when I went to attach it on, it kind of put pressure against the inner piece, and it was difficult getting it to sit right, and it kind of sort of knocked the wheels out of place a little bit. So I think I've folded it too much. You just need to fold it a little bit. But really, overall, that was really easy to put those wheels together compared to the other models. And one of the things that I ran into difficulty with, not difficulty, but possibly there's a mistake somewhere, I think. And I can't for sure say if it's the instructions or the painting of it, but part 29, and it's this very silver cross beam right here that you usually find under the transmission or somewhere in most vehicles. This cross beam right here, it's silver. It's painted on black on the other side, and the instructions seem to indicate that you're supposed to fold it so that that painted black side is the part that faces out. However, if you fold it that way, the offset tabs, because they're not straight across, there's one high and one kind of low if you're looking at it from this angle, the offset tabs won't let it attach straight with the black side folded out. And originally I did what the instructions seemed to be telling me to do, what I thought was supposed to be done, because the whole underside of this is black. Fold it so the black side faces out, and it didn't fit right. But if you flip it so that the silver side is facing out and the black side is hidden, it fits perfectly. I'm not the only one that's noticed that, because I saw someone on Reddit had the same problem too. I don't normally go look at other people and how they did the build before I start mine, because I like to come at it from kind of a raw approach. It's just kind of who I am, and it kind of works for my videos. But when I run into trouble, sometimes I will go out there and look and see what other people have done. Sometimes, there was a time when I would get models as soon as they came out. That happens occasionally, and there's no one else to really talk to. But I'm not the only one that ran into that. I could just go get a black Sharpie. I've got a black Sharpie, and maybe color that over. Perhaps after this video I will do that. But for this video I wanted to show it to you to see how it is. If you fold it inside out, it fits perfectly, and a black Sharpie would probably fix that up in a hurry. But one of the things to kind of watch out for, that the instructions seem to indicate to fold it black side out, but it's not going to fit that way. Another thing that I kind of improvised and done differently is these side view mirrors on either side. If you follow the instructions and look at the picture on it, you'll notice one side of the side view mirror is an engraved circle, the other side is not. In my mind, that engraved circle is the mirror side of it, and you want the mirror side to be facing back so that the driver can look up and see what's behind them. The instructions indicate the way you fold it, that little circle faces forward, and if you look on the packaging, they also have it so the circles are facing forward, but I don't think it should go that way. And I folded mine so that that circle was facing back. And I think I also had to flip the sides that they mounted to. That's not something you have to do, but it made sense to me, and I made that modification because this is my build. But you do that the way you want to do it. If you think those circles should be facing forward and that looks right, then you do just like the instructions say. And if you think they should go face back, fold them so that they're that way and flip the sides if you have to. But that was one of the things that just kind of bugged me a little bit, and I thought it needed to be changed. When it come time to attach the body to the framework, it wasn't too difficult this time around. A lot of times that's a big challenging step when you're building some model and you're attaching two halves together or a body to a frame. It can be challenging getting things lined up. This one was fairly easy to get things lined up and into place for the front body at least. The problem that I had is the tabs that you have to fold or twist to secure them are hidden under other parts. And on top of that, this is all black down here and the light just sucks that up. I've got 2 to 6 bright lights pointing on me at any time to help the camera see what I'm doing so you can see what I'm doing. And I still had trouble seeing it, and what I had to do was I didn't come at them straight away. It was just difficult to find something to get in there and work and fold and secure the tabs over in some of those places because, for instance, there's this cross member right here, right underneath. There's 2 tabs right underneath it, so you really can't get at it to twist it. You have to kind of snake in there and fold it over. Not a big deal because there's not going to be a lot of things trying to pull those apart, but a bit of a challenge to do. When it comes to putting the bed on and putting the back fender pieces on the bed, because this bed is curved on the sides, sometimes twisting the tabs wasn't so easy to do and do securely because you got an angle there. It's curved. The tabs are coming out in a curved spot, and it was difficult to get flat on the tab to twist it. I do have a curved tipped tool, but it doesn't always get a good grip. So there were occasions where instead of trying to twist these tabs, especially the ones holding on the 2 side fenders, I folded them over instead because they just seemed like they'd be more secure that way. And then last but not least, when it comes time to put these headlights on, they were a lot easier to shape than before. You have the horn piece, which is a couple of pieces, a little bit challenging but not too bad. The headlight pieces, the back sides are rather large, and I've got that 3D printed dome shaping tool that I use, and the smallest size was perfect for just wrapping these around that, pinching them down, and then they just dropped right into place. That was easy. A little bit challenging folding the tabs over without warping the back, but be careful, you can do it. The real problem was when it come time to attach the one tab in either side of the fenders were spread apart, and I had to push them together to get that part on, and then try and snake up in this wheel to secure it. You're supposed to twist it, and there's really not enough room to get in this wheel and twist anything without damaging other parts. So I twisted a little bit, but I couldn't twist it securely enough that it didn't just pop itself back apart. So I spent some time fighting with trying to partially twist and partially fold over the tabs until they were secure enough that the fenders wouldn't pull the headlight piece back out, or the headlights would just drip over and untwist themselves and pop out on one side. So that took a little bit of a struggle. Interestingly enough though, this detailed cross piece on top of the radiator was intimidating to try and shape. That came together really easily. I got that right on the first try and was kind of surprised at myself that I was able to get the pieces on that just about perfect on the first attempt. If you were watching some of my posts on social media when I first finished this model, the roof seams didn't line up very well at all, and I did my best in the initial setup to try and get that shaped, and it's difficult to get the shapes just right because it's partially curved and partially not, and I didn't get it right. I did go back after I was done and had some time away from the build to kind of convince the parts that they needed to bend over a little bit more, and it certainly looks a lot better now than it did when I first finished it. I got a little bit of grief on social media about that, but it's looking a lot better now. The only other thing that's kind of bothered me, it almost looks like the back droops down a little bit. I think it might be possible the wheels are slightly bent, but it almost looks like the bed is tilted back sometimes if you look at it at the right angle. I should mention before I forget again that this model took me 3.5 hours to put together. And I was really surprised when I went back and kind of did the math on all the time that I spent on it and arrived at 3.5 hours, because it did not feel like it took that long. And that was certainly quite a bit faster than the 32, but I didn't run into anywhere near the problems with this one that I did with the 32. It came together for the most part really simply and easily, and I'm really pleased with the end result. Didn't even feel like it took as long as it did, so it was a much more engaging and pleasing model to build, which is half of the point. Not just the end result, but the experience of getting it built. This was a fantastic one, and I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the final result, and I'm really amused that it had no back bumper, but things are a lot different in the 1930s. But challenges that I had with this were not that many and not that difficult. The model did come together a lot easier than other models, and it really does look fantastic. The more I talk about it, the more I look at this model, the happier I am with it, and the more it solidifies itself as being my favorite build. There were a couple of things I had to improvise on, the side mirrors, but that was all me, and I gotta go back and paint this cross beam before it bugs me too much. But really, all in all, really pleased. The tail lights were a lot easier to do than I expected, although when you first look at the one with the license plates, it's kind of a, they want me to do what? But I got some of the shaping done. I went to attach it, and then I could kind of see how it's supposed to kind of sprout off and hang there, and it all came together. It all came together in the end, and it's a fantastic model, and I'm gonna have to do some creative photos with this one because I got some ideas. Really enjoy this model. It's been my favorite out of the three, and probably a good one to start with if you're wanting to get into these colored Ford models, because it's not as challenging as the other two, the 37 and the 32, in my opinion. But then again, the 32 might have been because the paint was too thick, so that might not have been as challenging for or might not be as challenging for others as it was for me. I may have gotten a dud, but I made it work. Of course, at the end of this review video, I do like to try and go look back and say, what would I have done differently if I had this build to do over again? I had to actually think about that for a while on this one, because I was so pleased with how these front fenders came out. I was so pleased at how this bit came out. The bed came together nicely. The headlights came together nicely. There was a little struggle getting the two corners together, but I worked it out. The seams on the roof initially didn't work out like I want to, but I did the best I could at the time and was able to mostly fix it later, so really can't say I do that differently. What I finally settled on is the wheels. When it comes to the outer part of the wheels, I wouldn't have tried so hard to bend the inner flaps down as much. I would have given them a much more subtle bend, because that's all they really needed, and it probably would have fit on the outside without resistance and without pushing the centerpiece off to one side or another, because that's what happened with a couple of these wheels. That centerpiece just sits in there on two little stems. It could easily bend one way or the other, and I had to fight to try and get them back straight because the flaps on the outer piece were pushing the inner piece off to one side or another and causing it to go off center. Not a big deal, and I could have stopped myself at the first wheel and said, hey, let me fix this, but I didn't. But looking back, that's the one thing I would do differently, is just not bend those flaps in as much as I did. Otherwise, I pretty much would have done everything else the same as I did it for this model, and I'm very happy with the end result. So, I'm gonna leave it at that. Thank you, of course, again to Fascinations for sending me this model to build and review. I absolutely loved it. This has been my favorite of the three Ford color models. I do want to thank you for watching, and thank you to everyone who comments and interacts in my videos. I appreciate it. And of course, thank you to my Patreon supporters for continuing to support this channel. As always, thank you for watching, and keep on keeping on.